The moment you need someone so much that you'd rather they stayed small than risk losing them, that's not love anymore. That's something else. Something that wears love's face. Simone de Beauvoir spent her entire life trying to name the difference, and what she found should unsettle every relationship you've ever been in. We are taught, very early, that love is about giving everything, that the measure of your love is the size of your sacrifice. Mothers, movies, love songs, they all point the same direction. Dissolve yourself. Prove it by losing yourself. And most of us, at least once, have believed that completely. Have handed ourselves over and called it devotion. But de Beauvoir watched what happened when people actually did that, and what she saw disturbed her. Not because love was rare, but because the thing people called love was so often a quiet destruction. Two people slowly erasing each other, or one person erasing themselves, all in the name of something they'd agreed to call devotion. She had a word for it. She called it fusion, and she thought it was a trap. Fusion is what happens when the boundary between you and the person you love goes soft. When you can't tell where your desires end and theirs begin. It feels, at first, like closeness, like finally being known. But de Beauvoir, drawing on her existentialist philosophy, said something harder. You cannot truly love a person you have absorbed. You can only love a person who remains genuinely other, genuinely separate, genuinely free. Think about what that actually means for a moment. It means the very thing that makes love feel safe, the merging, the we, the sense that you are now one unit moving through the world, might be the thing that makes love impossible. Because if you have swallowed someone into your life, what you love is no longer them. You love the version of them you've made room for, the version that fits. De Beauvoir was not speaking in abstractions. She lived this tension out loud, famously, painfully, for 50 years with Jean-Paul Sartre. Their relationship broke every convention. No shared home for most of it, no exclusivity demanded, no performance of togetherness. People called it cold. People called it a philosophical experiment, not a real love. But read her letters, and the grief in them is undeniable. This was not a woman who loved lightly. She chose difficulty because she believed ease was a lie. What she was reaching toward, and what took her decades to articulate, was a love built not on need, but on recognition. There is a difference between needing someone and seeing someone. Need pulls the other person toward a shape you require. Recognition lets them be the shape they already are. One of them is about you, only one of them is love. And here is where it gets genuinely hard. Because recognition, real recognition, asks something almost unbearable of you. It asks you to allow the person you love to want things you can't give them, to grow in directions you didn't plan for, to be changed by experiences that have nothing to do with you. It asks you to hold someone's freedom more carefully than you hold your own comfort. Most of us are not taught how to do that. Most of us have never seen it modeled. De Beauvoir believed that the opposite of love was not hate. It was what she called bad faith, the choice to pretend you have no freedom, or to pretend the person you love has none either. To lock each other in, give each other roles, and then mistake the stability of that arrangement for love. Bad faith is comfortable. It asks nothing, and it leaves you, years later, wondering who you actually were before you became someone's fixed point. You've probably felt this. The relationship that felt like a home until you realized it had no windows. The love that asked you, slowly and without drama, to stop being interested in the things that interested you. To want less, go less far, risk less. Not because anyone demanded it, but because it was easier for both of you if you just stayed small. That is not cruelty. That is the ordinary erosion that de Beauvoir was warning about. So what does the alternative actually look like? De Beauvoir was careful here. She was a philosopher, not a life coach, and she didn't hand out blueprints. But what she pointed toward was a love structured around what she called genuine reciprocity. Two people, each fully committed to their own freedom, choosing each other not out of fear or need, but out of something harder and rarer, out of real, ongoing election. You choose them, they choose you. And you keep choosing, Not because you're bound to, but because you keep finding it true. That choice, made freely, is the only kind of love de Beauvoir thought worth the name. And what makes it so difficult is that it requires you to tolerate uncertainty at the very center of the thing you want most. Because if they are free, genuinely free, then they might go. And you cannot use love as a cage to prevent that. The moment you do, you have already lost the thing you were trying to protect. There's a particular kind of loneliness in loving someone freely. It doesn't look like the loneliness of being alone. It looks like sitting next to someone you love and understanding that they are, in some irreducible way, entirely elsewhere, separate, unknowable in their deepest parts, and choosing, consciously, painfully choosing, to find that beautiful rather than threatening. That is what maturity in love might actually be. Not certainty, not merger, but a sustained, tender tolerance of mystery. De Beauvoir didn't promise that this kind of love would feel safe. She promised it would be real. And maybe that is the only promise love can honestly make. Not that it will hold still, not that it will always be enough, but that when it is freely given, when no one is caged, no one is erased, what passes between two people is actual. It is contact between two actual lives. And that, she believed, was the most serious thing a human being could offer another.